Thank you very much. My name is Eugene Shirley. I'm with Pando Populous, and I appreciate you all being with us today. We are an environmental and social impact accelerator based in Los Angeles County. This Pando Days initiative is bringing together the art, design, architecture, and sustainability programs of 10 Southland colleges and universities together to help LA County implement its ambitious sustainability plan. Each of the participating Pando Days institutions adopted a different goal from the county's plan and created really ingenious ideas for how to implement the goal that they chose. Project brainstorming began in the fall of last year with project development over 7 months. Make sure you go to our website, pandopopulous.com, to see all the school project descriptions and deliverables there, including implementation plans and prototypes. We're posting them on a rolling basis between now and the final premiere week. We have scheduled 2 premiere events per week over 5 weeks, one event for each of the participating Pando Days schools. All 10 of the premiere events follow the same format. They are hosted by a member of the Pando Board of Directors, and they feature the work of one of the participating institutions. You'll hear a summary of the presentation by the project team lead and those whom she's. That'll be followed by short responses from 3 members of the Chief Sustainability Officer Strategic Task Force for LA County. The CSOs will also ask a few questions of the team and the lead, and then we'll open up for public Q&A, and we'll close by the end of the hour. I should finally say that all projects are being assessed by a panel of judges who will do so based on the recordings of these presentations and the project deliverables that'll be on the website. When we come together on July 25 for the festival finale, we'll hear at that time which projects they believe have the greatest chance for the greatest impact for county sustainability. The Pando Days host for today is Corinna Gore. Corinna is a member of the Pando Board of Directors, and she's the founding director of the Center for Earth Ethics at Union Theological Seminary. Corinna was born in Tennessee, raised there and in Washington, D.C. She's an attorney and an author, and we are absolutely delighted to have her hosting this event today. Corinna, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eugene. I'm really honored to be with you. It's been wonderful to be connected to Pando Populous, and this particular project and event is inspiring. I'm learning a lot, and I'm just really delighted to be here. So my gratitude to each and every one of you who's tuning in, and especially those who've contributed so much work to go into what will be presented today. So we are going to be talking about the project Repurposing Land, done by the LA Trade Technical College of Architecture. And this is in response specifically to LA County goal number 4, which is a prosperous LA County that provides opportunities for all residents and businesses and supports the transition to a green economy. I want to remind people that you can find out, you can look up all of the projects and more details about all of this on pandopopulous.com. And before we hear from the leaders of this work, I just want to take a moment to reflect on what an extraordinary time we are in here together. We were already facing a climate crisis, an ecological crisis, in which we understood that the trajectory that our whole society was on was perilous because of the amount of pollution, because of the depletion of what we call natural resources, forest, soil, air, water. And one of the insights that has been shared in many places, including in the Pope's encyclical Laudato Si', which is something that we've discussed in the Pando community and in the Center for Earth Ethics, but insights from indigenous communities, certainly from Black communities, from so many other parts of society. One central insight is that we are not separate from our environment. A lot of times the way we talk about these issues, it seems as if humanity is separate. And this is, of course, a great illusion and fallacy. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, all reflect the integral ecology, the fact of interconnectedness. And it is especially important to realize that culture is part of that. Many times it seems as if we are acting at the effect of these problems that are coming at us from the ecological crisis and not realizing the level of cause in which we can come together and change, and in which the leaders of the change are actually, the best leadership comes from the communities themselves. So we have seen just in the past few months an incredible awakening. The coronavirus pandemic, our hearts and minds are with all those who have suffered and died and lost loved ones, and in no way was this a positive thing. However, it has brought a heightened awareness and a shift in perception about the nature of our interconnectedness. It has revealed some of the injustices and fissures in our society that we need to pay more attention to. And one of those things is, of course, justice. And today is a day in which we can see around us the new awareness of many things, including racial injustice, structural racism. The coronavirus pandemic showed that there were disproportionate impacts of this virus on Black communities and other communities of color. And it also revealed that there is a kind of slow violence that happens when you have degraded environments, including with pollution, including with neglect of all the things that we know nurture human life to flourish. And we've also seen, of course, in the tipping point in the murder of George Floyd, that there's, in addition to that slow violence, there is the immediate, brutal, fast violence that we've seen with the killing of Black Americans at the hands of police, and also the other systems in which structural racism is reflected. Today is Juneteenth. Today is a day that some communities have honored as a sacred day for a long time, a day grounded in a historical moment in which Black communities in Texas learned the news of emancipation, legal emancipation from slavery, belatedly learned that news. What Juneteenth today also can mean for so many of us is the realization that we're living in a time in which that narrative, that story, the power of that community, centering those concerns and all that that represents, has a great leadership and healing potential for our whole country. So I want to just acknowledge that we are here together in that time, and it is so dynamic. There's so much change coming that we can be a part of. And so I'm very honored to be here with the creative energy of the people who are leading from within the community in LA on this absolutely critical topic of repurposing land and revitalizing culture so that the human community and all the life community on Earth can flourish. And so now let's hear about this fascinating project from the lead, who is Professor Marcela Oliva. Professor, please share.
Thank you so much. I am Professor Oliva, Architecture at LA Trade Tech, and in partnership with Eco Union Housing Corporation Innovation Lab Union east of Staples Center, downtown LA. And I'm just going to take a minute to say that this is basically Los Angeles have way under 50% access to green spaces. There's no access to green spaces, specifically in communities of colors, and this is a real problem. So what you're gonna see here is how do we take that goal and we convert it into an action that immediately, working very close with the community, can change it. We're working very close with LAUSD, Careers by Design LA, Mayor's Office, the AIA, the LA Sanitation, Councilmember Cedillo, United States Green Building Council, and many other players that are really facilitating these important interventions to make green space available for our community. Again, our team is made out of interns and is made out of community college students. An intern, Garrett Johnson, is going to be the participant that is going to lead us through a participation that includes over 20 different students from different countries and from different parts of our city that put this together. Thank you, Garrett. Please take over.
Hello, everyone. My name is Garrett Johnson. Like Marcella said, I am an intern with the Pico Union Housing Corp. Happy Juneteenth. I'm going to share my screen and start my presentation. Okay, welcome. And this is what the Los Angeles Trade Tech College architecture program in cooperation with the Pico Union Housing Corporation with the Puerta Sena Innovation Lab. We are Pando. Our project is to convert deteriorated land into green living alleys. We have identified problems, opportunities, solutions, as well as establishing tools and manuals to achieve this goal. The problem we have is throughout most major cities, alleys are the last cityscapes to be transformed. Most alleys are used for bulk dumping, still water runoff, which could breed mosquitoes, unsafe walking conditions, and overall blight. Through that, though, it provides us with an opportunity. We can transform alleys. This is Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. We have identified 12,250 recorded alleys in 2016. With that, we mostly focused around the alleys around MacArthur Park. So here is where our Pico Union is and the LA Trade Tech College. So we identified 7 alleys that we are going to transform and turn into something better than what it is now. We can't do that without the help of the community and the council members. And by doing so, so far what we've already done is cleaned out a few of the 7 alleys. And that alone has brought the community together and gives them a sense of pride in their surroundings. Instead of having just trash behind their house, now they have something to be proud of, and also using the green space and adding color. We know that this process does work because we have other examples and resources available. Through Chicago and Seattle, they also did green alleys to restore for pedestrian walking. You've seen marketplaces and sitting areas. Our solution, though, will focus largely on a holistic approach. Each of the alleys will have vertical trellises, which is the main focus of our plan. We also do community murals. Each community member or neighborhood will be in charge of designing and creating their own identity for each alley, and it develops their creativity and also a sense of ownership. We have a site analysis for each of the alleys, where we identify whether it's a commercial building or residential, what type of landscape is around it, whether it's hardscape or vegetation. We utilize AutoCAD for 3D rendering. So we have a 3D view of what each alley's makeup is, and also photographs to do perspective, and Esri story map for community engagement and to identify unique opportunities and challenges that each alley may have. The solutions, this is one of our vertical trellis makeup. We will have fabrics that will clean the air on the trellises, as well as solar panels to provide electricity for, that'd be for fans for the system to circulate air, or charging stations on some of the alleys. This will also, the vertical trellises will have food stations, whether that be for plants, herbs, just different green spaces, so it can have diversity in the alley, not just concrete or walls. Here's an example of one of our before and afters. These are just concepts. Each community member will be able to focus on which design they like, which plants they like. well as what geometric shapes, colors. I mean, sky's the limit with this. We try to utilize a lot of things from nature, a lot of designs from nature. So leaves, trees, plants, flowers. This is another one along the wall here. Here are a few more examples. This one concept came from origami. We also have the solar panels. This one can grow passion fruit. Water collecting, so that way when it rains, the plants can store the water and be able to regenerate that through irrigation. These are scarlet runner beans. Here's another example of the snap bees using the Breathe Pure technology, which is a fabric that cleans the air around it and also has a USB charging station. Here's an example of what it might look like along a wall. And here are tomatoes and another example of how it can be used on fencing. And again, the community can decide on which plants, which vertical trellis they would like to use and have their own identity in each alley. Here's another example of the water collector as well as the solar panels. And then here is one that resembles river rocks. It has water irrigation veins, breathable fabric, solar panels on top, similar to what I just mentioned with the vegetation. This one I enjoy because you can really see how it almost has like an Alice in Wonderland type look. It has the solar panels on top. You'll see lavender plants in the planter. This can be put next to any wall, and you can see the material used is wood. It's not that expensive to construct with this design. Here's another example of our trellises along another wall. Before and after. These use geometry shapes. We also have a laser cutter that we use to cut some of these shapes and designs. This is another example of the solar panels and lights. So at night, a lot of alleys are dark and dangerous. This will help illuminate the alleys so that way it reduces crime. This is one of my favorite is the canopies. The canopies, as you can see, resemble nature again, but we use to cover the alleys to keep it cool. Here's a 3D design of that. A lot of alleys. This one also incorporates solar panels on top of the canopies. Reduces urban heat. So our tools and manuals will have workshops for each of the community members to join, and so they can make a prototype of their own alley and their own creation. These are just examples that they can see to facilitate creativity and to allow them to express themselves in each of their own alleys. So that way, it's not just an outsider coming in and changing their landscape without their input. We want them to decide on how they want to shape their own neighborhood. And luckily, the EPA agreed because we received an environmental justice grant. So the Pico Union Housing Center and the Puerto Center Green Alleys will partnership with the EPA, and we were one of 5 California community groups to receive this grant. We're very proud of that. Thank you again. This was our presentation for the LA Trade Tech College and the Pico Union Housing Corporation Puerto Innovation Lab. Any questions?
Fabulous, Karen. Fabulous job.
Wonderful. So I believe we are going to be joined by 3 members of the Chief Sustainability Officer Strategic Task Force for Los Angeles County, who will be able to offer some comments and questions. And after they do that, we'll open up the Q&A for public questions. So you can do that through the chat function on this platform, and I believe Adam is identified there and has already reached out to ask people to submit their questions. So first up, we have Pablo La Roche. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I hope so.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great. And he is professor of architecture at Cal Poly Pomona and sustainable design leader at the architecture firm Callison RTKL. So Pablo, we're really eager to hear your thoughts on this and any of your questions. Thank you.
Sure. I guess the first thing is really to congratulate the team. I mean, this is really fantastic. I think I really enjoyed the presentation. It was, I had already looked at the presentation online, but it's really good to hear all the details. Very strong in many areas. You know, the first part is really, I think, what we're increasing the amount of usable space that we're giving to the people, right? To the people of a city. It's just opening up a lot of space that was otherwise just for service and not available. It's like back of house. Now, the project has really interesting components. You know, it has participation with the community. That is, I think, is a really, it's a strength of the project. It's really connecting with what the community wants and what the community needs also. And they're participating in this process. I enjoyed also hearing about the site analysis, a very detailed site analysis, which sort of maps out the different qualities and properties. I'm just looking here like at the image of the site with, you know, what types of walls there were, operable fence, fixed fence, wall fence, fence with plants. All of this is necessary to do an adequate intervention, right? You have to understand what the site is like to really do the right intervention. And then, oh, at the end, there's also a grant. Wow, it's, you know, it's fantastic. So, you know, there's even an EPA grant to support this process. Now, then looking at the examples from the many examples that I see that students have developed, I see a common theme sort of addressing three things. And maybe there's a lot more, but I see water collection, I see greenery, sort of increasing the greenery, and I see generation of energy, right? I sort of see these three common themes in the proposals. I guess my question would be sort of how, and I see there's one thing I really like also is that there's all sorts of proposals and different, and they're all different. And I think part of it is also that the community is going to participate in the development of the specific proposals. Exactly. But I would like to know if there's like, let's say some more detailed guidelines. For example, if we're talking about water, we're talking about water collection, right? How do we collect water as a fluid? If we're talking about solar energy, we want to maximize the best orientation, right? We want to have maybe a south orientation and not shaded by the buildings on the other side. And if we're talking about greenery, then we're also talking about what's the best place to provide shade or for a place as respite and people to gather below the greenery also. So I guess my question is, how have these issues been addressed in the proposals? I think everything is really sort of has all the right pieces. I just want to know a little bit more about how this has been addressed as a design problem.
Thank you, Pablo. I'll answer to that question. That's why we make sure that it's such a holistic solution that this morning, actually, we just spoke with our consultant for the Energy Commission. These are only all conceptual. We also have urban gardeners. So as we were developing the schematics, we have each of these specialists come and look at our conceptual design to make sure that we had enough soil, that the thickness of the trellises were thick enough to allow for the irrigation system. So even that there are conceptual, we brought all the specialists at a very early stage. And of course, the trash can has to be coming exactly right now. So I apologize. What is the timing, right? So we brought solar consultants, water consultants, and energy consultants at a conceptual level very early. We also work with air quality control. Sorry about that. I think I'm going to have to mute it. So I don't know if that answers.
May I add to that? Another thing, that's a reason why we did the site analysis too. And you're correct. There are certain areas that may not be able to utilize solar panels or may be hazardous to collect water. So we utilize the site analysis to identify those issues as well as having the experts comment on that.
And that was really difficult. I mean, the whole idea of a site analysis is a very difficult area to do. But yeah, the whole idea is to make it all in 3D so we can do solar studies. So we're looking forward to move to the next step, to move to schematic to design development and fabrication. We also have some industrial designers that came to speak to the class. So we're hoping that with this momentum, and we need to raise a little bit more money, that we can do more prototypes out of this effort.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pablo, for your comments. Very, very happy to hear your comments. It means a lot. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I believe it's time now for us to hear from Devon Hartman, who is CEO of the Community Home Energy Retrofit Project, known as CHIRP, which is developing the world's first nonprofit solar factory in Pomona, right nearby. So Devon, please share. I think you're muted, possibly.
How about that? Okay, thank you. It's an extraordinary opportunity to participate in this particular event. There's probably nothing that in any of these presentations that is so rich with opportunity. From a technical perspective and also from an arts and culture perspective. I mean, there's so many different things that are going on here with interactions from water and pollution and lighting and plantings and permeable pavement technologies. The idea of albedo and reflection of heat to help cool, heat island effects, all the way down to historic preservation issues and a sense of place. So in reviewing this, this incredible presentation beforehand and wading through the extraordinary amount of information that you've all placed on the website, for anyone listening, I would encourage everyone to go to the website and really dig deeply into the presentation and all of the backup materials and videos that are provided. It's a very rich experience. And as I was going through that, I was first of all struck by the technological barriers and the need for expertise. But I think what floated to the surface for me in reviewing all this material was really maybe three concepts. And the first one is the concept of beauty in and of itself. This project in so many ways screams art and local expression with a focus on the transformative possibilities of beauty and putting beauty back into the conversation around ecology and around technology and around economics. So beauty is one thing that rose to the surface for me. The other thing is the idea of identification of local assets. I think these alleyway projects are bite-sized projects that are rich with layers, and yet they are hyper-local. And they force us to identify local assets and local individuals, actually, who intersect in various levels and aspects and actual place of these alleys in terms of ownership or neighborhood participation. That identifying these local assets and bringing them to bear, I think, is a topic of our time. As we move away from multinational control of our local cities to bringing back jobs and bringing back a sense of place and ownership. And so that was the second term that kind of came to my mind. And the third thing that really struck me is the idea of intention. Just this concept that through local people deciding to care and focus their attentions and their care and their love on a particular spot in their neighborhood, many miraculous things can happen. So I would just like to turn this back over. My question really is that of hearing more from you about the idea of the power of beauty and what you discovered in your exploration of this project.
So Devon, so wise, all your words, so wise. I was taking notes. Thank you so much for saying so many important things. We believe all these geometries are formed by biomimicry. These are patterns found in nature and in the universe. They're called sacred geometries. So we have a process that on all the urban interventions, they have to follow these geometries. And it's amazing because after that, people begin falling in love with math. Some of the kids in the block, they were making a line so they could be next to it. Some of them read how to read because it was on the Trellos, and we haven't even done a full one. It was just the first kind of prototypes, not even using the laser. So I think for me, beauty was given to us. It's a very spiritual existence. I think we are embryo organisms, and it is our role to connect us back to nature's grid. So all these proposals are actually from nature. And that's, I think, very engaging. And we always call it our secret. But yes, beauty is part of healing. And when they are able to create something that is as beautiful, we think that we're only creating like SimCity. They can actually, we're creating templates in SketchUp. So people in the community will be able to play with these prototypes. We're just giving them examples, but we want them to be the creators. I think we are all co-creators of the universe. And I think it brings the spirituality connection of a sense of place. So I very much appreciate your words. It's going to help us to even continue explaining it the way you explain it. Is going to be extremely helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I think this is extraordinary. I'm very inspired. And I think this is a transformational project that you're working on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have one more person to hear from before we go to the public Q&A, and that is Mark Spears, the retired CSO from Disney. Mark, are you with us? Please take it away.
I am, and thank you so much. Thank you, Corinna. And Marcella, no surprise on the amazing and the extraordinary project that your team's put together, having visited your studio at LA Trade Tech. Just the passion in which you instruct and allow and draw out the talent of these teams is clearly coming through in this project. So certainly want to recognize that. And Garrett, as a representative of the project team, thank you again so much. Really echoing a lot of what Pablo and Devon have already talked about. My question as it relates to the project probably is under a common theme of community. And that has to do maybe on the hardscape and the softscape side. One is, has there been consideration given to the actual construction, fabrication, and installation of these elements as it relates to community jobs and being able to employ and engage the community beyond simply the selection and design process? And then the second part of that is, given the fact that I know you've done some research in the past about similar projects, how do we think about measuring the social impact of this installation as it relates to community engagement, involvement, neighbors, meeting neighbors, mental, improvement of mental and physical health? How are we thinking about that community aspect and the success that ultimately I think will elevate this project to a much higher level, nationally? Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Mark, and I appreciate your work, and all of you guys are so on target, and for me more than anything, so important for the next step. So what they call the cycle economy, and what they call the eco-civilization and how we're gonna create jobs. Interesting, this morning I had a meeting with MIT, just came out with a course called Entrepreneurship for the Built Environment. And I'm talking with them because it's specifically that, how do we create jobs? How do we measure all of these? I have a few meetings with some platforms where we're gonna be documenting all these interventions and following it up with data. I'm writing another grant with the NSF because we are hoping that as people create these trellises, they can probably, because we have laser cutter for metal, then they can sell it all over the world. Or that's the way that we're gonna have people being engaged in, you know, solar engineer or soil engineer. And I think that that way we're gonna get people into schools and we're gonna get people in the community interested in jobs. So working with the mayor's office too this morning, we're working on a few platforms. I don't have the solution and we need a lot of help of how to start quantifying these. I'm also work very close with Ben, with Pando Populous. He has a fabulous network platform of how we can bring all these government agencies available resources and start thinking as an ecosystem. Because that's the way we actually operate in any of these urban interventions. So that's exactly our next, what you just brought up. That's where we want to go next. We are exploring. We are an exploratory phase for the next stage of the project. So right on target. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel.
Another thing, if you don't mind if I add to that.
Please, Garrett.
So one thing that drew me to the project is, like you were saying, how do we measure the success of it with the community? One of the things is getting people interested in engineering, architecture, solar, environmental design. And
Science.
So by having that, and like as Devon mentioned earlier, using art as a way to draw people into science, which is normally kind of for people not interested in science may seem boring, but when you add art elements and then people are building these structures, they may go into trade school or community college or other ways of learning how to use this as a profession. And these are set up in communities that may not see that as an opportunity. And now they do because somebody took a chance on them. And so I think that's another element that we can measure. We also talked about community surveys, which wasn't mentioned in the presentation, but community surveys, seeing a baseline of where everyone's at in terms of their demographics and their interest and education level. And then after the project, doing a midpoint and then an endpoint just to measure each step as we go along to see if we're achieving our goals.
And Garrett is we're designing a story map. So we're hoping to at least start photographing or start doing testimonials. So we can start very basic with testimonials and story maps. But definitely, we want to close the life cycle and the assessment part of it.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Mark.
So now it would be time for our public Q&A. I'm not noticing any questions yet. So, oh yeah, there's a question from Michael Whitmer asking, how can we harness local guerrilla artists? And I know you have the answer to that because basically your presentation showed 1 or 2 interventions of the 10 interventions that you are doing. So please tell us more about the street art that's also planned for.
So Pico Union Housing has a graph lab, and I don't know if you heard about it. They've been doing for a long time. They teach visual arts and they do murals. We are also, there's another organization called Beautify Earth that they're responsible of one of the nicest murals in Los Angeles, as well as the graph lab. So we are trying to, that's why the virtualization is so important, to put people, places, projects, and human talent and education. That is so important. So I think this is gonna be our next step. Now that we have the site analysis, we have the workshops, and we have with this momentum, I think that's the next step. I'm not sure I'm answering be your question precisely. Let me see if I can read it. I don't know if that answered.
I know that you told me that you're engaged with local artists who
Yes.
who are
Yes.
thinking along with the actual master plan of
Yes.
the alleys. Yeah.
Correct.
Christy Pace asks, will any of the alleys be closed to traffic, and will it be a safe place for kids to bike or people to gather?
Thank you so much. One of the things that it will be depend on the community we're working. Yes, it could be that it's temporarily closed in the evenings. So each of the alleys has a captain, and the captain will design some kind of schedule. So how is the alley used in the morning? How is it used in the afternoon? And how is it used in the evening? Maybe even on the weekend, it's temporarily closed. So we do want to make gates that are operable. Maybe some are not, we do not require a gate, because we still need, you know, the traffic to go by. So each alley has its own particularities, but some of them we are exploring the gate component, but it's really like at different types of the day. A lot of these alleys connect schools. We have middle schools and high schools. So it really becomes a beautiful space for them to just walk to school that is healthy, that is safe. So I think at different times of the day will be different. We're also working with street vendors. So we're hoping that in some of the alleys we will have some, especially in the areas where there's no food for the kids around it, we're gonna have some nice looking street vendors in the alley. So yeah, we're looking each one alley at a time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Until there's a next question, I have a story to tell about you, which was when I came to visit you at Trade Tech. You know, of course, you have the very cool desk made from Star Trek, the deck, the navigation deck, or whatever it's called. Very cool, but that's not what I wanted to tell. It was more this very touching story that you told about that you grew up in Mexico City, and your father was a doctor, and every now and then he would have to go to the countryside to take care of these small villages that had no medical support, and he would bring you along, and even though you would come to these places that were, had absolute poverty, you'd notice that people would still have they'd be taken care of, clean. They would be, their environment was designed, was cared for, nurtured. And then when you came to the US to study at USC, you were kind of like struck by the complete devoidness of care for the environment. And you actually, I went to my notes, and you used the quote, or the knowledge of how do you break a slave? You take away any desire to change their environment. And so, you then as an architecture student kind of came to the conclusion that it was also an urban planning or architectural flaw, and went on to do your master's and so forth. But and you could have gone on a career with Bernard Sumi and whatnot in highfalutin. But your architecture and the structures that you build is social fabric. A totally different thing, trying to bring love back to the built environment. So I'm not sure if that, no, I wanted to ask you, 15 years into working at LA Trade Tech, how does this green social design, how is it working for you? Are you as inspired as you used to be? Are you battle worn and wish you could just retire? Where are you at?
Thank you
And then
so
also
much.
I'd like to ask your students, what kind of beacon, shining light are you for them?
Thank you so much for contextualizing everything. I feel that I'm just beginning. I feel like I'm just at a place that I'm beginning. I feel more certain than ever that the environment is a way to slave the mind. And I think that the cultural fabric that architects can fabricate and become a hidden force in the community hasn't been exploded. Especially right now, that's why we're using a lot of recycled things. I think having pride of your community doesn't have to do with money. Money doesn't buy design, doesn't buy the connection with the community. And I really appreciate you bringing all this. And I think, yes, more than ever, I think that the time is now. And now I see the results. So now I feel very confident that more than ever, I think I attract a lot of wonderful people. I mean, look at Garrett, and I wish you can meet more of my students. This is really like an amazing magnet of people that are already enlightened and connected and understand the connection between the natural environment and the built environment. And I think we need many more that need to, that have more than anything, they have a framework of participation. They have a way to be engaged because it doesn't take that much. And I think that's gonna bring health, mental health, physical health, and the sense of beauty, like one of our jury was mentioning. So thank you for saying that, Adam, and reviving that freedom of the mind through the built environment.
And the sense of belonging.
A sense of belonging.
Gina has the follow-up to the last question. Community resistance. Oftentimes alleyways are butt up against the back of individual homeowners' homes. Many do not want activity in their alleyway for fear it will increase exposure to crime. This happened in my former community in Mid-City. The neighborhood alley was actually closed to everyone, including homeowners. Do you encounter this pushback, and is there a plan to address this?
Absolutely. And then I saw another question, like if we work with Ron Finley. Yes, the whole idea is that when you go to a community, you will work with all the internal forces and all the internal drivers. Absolutely. We don't want to intervene or interfere on anybody's privacy. That's why we even do a lot of studies with youth. So we've done a lot of, like if you're on this alley or we're putting a light, that's the beautiful thing about talking with technologies, because you're able to see where is something looking at and which privacy could you be interfering. So absolutely, we want to work with local artists. We want to work with state artists. We want to create something that allows participation and everybody to be heard, and also have that cycle. So if something's not working, hey, maybe we need to do that. So we don't want to come up with a final solution. It's just like nature. It's constantly revising itself, And if somebody's upset because A, B, C, and D, oh, let's do X, Y, and D. And if something, so we're never going to say this is final or this is something coming from the outside into the community, but this is coming from within. And then that way we can constantly be improving it. So if there's a discomfort, okay, no problem, let's work on that. We are very creative and we can always solve any problem that comes to us when we work together and peacefully, and more than anything with a nice structure. Those tensions are good, because tensions, that's where innovation happens. So when somebody has a problem with X, Y, and Z, then we need to invent something. So actually that tension is going to motivate us to invent or to implement something even better. So yes, we welcome all of that.
Melissa Rodriguez asks, maintenance for every project is always important to keep it alive. Is the community going to be responsible for keeping the alleys clean? How can we ensure that this fabulous project would stay for the long run?
So thank you so much. That's one of the things. For each of the blocks, we have captains, and we're working with middle schools, high schools, nonprofit organizations. So they will be the ones taking the workshops. They will be the ones making the interventions with our help. But we want somebody to, if we're gonna be growing tomatoes and there's a local store or a local restaurant, they will be the ones using the tomatoes. So maybe they can help us keep the tomatoes planted. So each is just a template, it's a prototype, but each alley will be changing because people move and restaurants move and business moves. So that's the whole idea of keeping a dynamic model that is constantly changing because it will come from within. And each, even McDonald's was interested to give us some of of their part of their alley. So I think each alley will have its own culture. It will have its own untapped talent, and it will have its own variables. And we just need to create. That's what an architect does these days. I think an architect creates a knowledge architecture, a system architecture that allows all these to be orchestrated in a smooth way, in a participatory way, with enough tension and enough collaboration.
Thank you. I have two more last questions. In which places will you be using repurposed or recycled materials?
So we want to use recycle as much as possible everywhere we want. We are fans of Pinterest, so we have a lot of examples from outside from us, but as much recycle as we can use. We've been working a lot with recycled concrete. And recycled concrete can do beautiful outdoor furniture, and we're designing a lot of molds. So we want to use it for playgrounds. We want to use it for recycled furniture. We want to use it for murals, for decoration. I have an intern right now working with recycled plastics. So we want to use as much recycling and make it look beautiful. As long as we follow the geometries from nature, the recycle is going to look beautiful. So we merge the recycling with the geometries from nature. And then I have this fabulous thing that helps me all the time, is the tensegrity model. And we actually have one of our collaborators, Harvard student, has the algorithm, because when we look at an alley, we look at everything. We look at the community input, energy, water, and we try to get these balances. Was invented by Buckminster Fuller. And when it's too flat, it means that it's out of balance. So we want to take all these things into, that's why Don Cobb is such a genius. He's an we got to think as an ecosystem, because it's constantly, we got to think about everything. And that's what our architects are really good at, to create that holistic grid of multiple participation.
Last question. What would truly help your next step?
We know with the three, with Adam and the three of you guys had motivated me so much. The next step, I think we got to work on the three things that our advisors and the juror mentioned. We got to do prototypes. We got to work on our platforms. We have selected some of the alleys and really start creating some life cycle assessment and testimonials. And then the more the merrier. Anybody that wants to help us, that want to participate, we welcome everybody. We believe the beautiful thing about Pando, we believe that everybody has a special gift in life, and we need all of us in making this world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I hand it now back to Karina.
You're the best, Adam.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has really been an extraordinary presentation, and I'm inspired and honored to be a part of it. I want to really thank Pando Populous for their vision and leadership, and also thank LA County for such an incredible, an ambitious and cogent and clear sustainability plan. I really enjoyed and learned from all of the comments that were given by members of the Strategic Task Force. And thank you to Professor Oliva. And I know she mentioned there were students and other members of the team that weren't able to be on. To everybody who was involved, this has really been a revelation and an inspiration. What I take away from it is that this project is, it combines a very utilitarian, useful purpose in exactly the way that we need to actually make this transition to a new energy system that we've been talking about and hearing about for some time and never seems to quite get implemented. We heard about that with the water collection, the renewable energy components, the greenery. Sometimes when we talk about the climate crisis, people talk about mitigation and adaptation. I'm not crazy about exactly that way of talking about it, but you see both here. You see the mitigation, the switching to new energy systems. And you also see the cooling effect, which is adapting to what will inevitably be hotter temperatures. So in these ways, this project is so useful and practical, but there's something more to it that's really lifting my spirit. And that is, it came up with different words: beauty, reconnection, healing, community, belonging. There is this sense that there is a driving spirit behind this, which is itself going to create and open pathways for more transformative change. And I suppose I want to close by saying, you know, I think many of us have lived with a sense of discomfort, like our systems are at war with the natural world. We're trying to, it's that old paradigm of kind of domination and mastery, that somehow we're going to win if we pit ourselves against it. And what this project shows is balance and harmony, and going with these different natural processes, the sacred geometry that was talked about, the different shapes and the incorporation. And then, of course, the inclusion of humanity, human beings, ourselves, as part of the ongoing process of creating and sustaining and renewing this. So I am just delighted and honored and inspired by this project. Repurposing Land is such a humble title for actually what you all have undertaken. And I just want to say thank you and all my respect, and to turn it over now to Eugene Shirley to close us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinna. And thank you so much for hosting this. It's great to have you with us today, and thank you for taking the lead here. Many thanks to you, Marcella, and the whole Trade Tech team for creating such an amazing initiative and strong presentation. Everyone, remember, you can see their project at pandopopulous.com, and Betsy has been posting the address. Many thanks to the members of the CSO task force who responded today: Pablo La Roche, Devon Hartman, and Mark Spears. Many thanks to the Pando Days curator, Adam Ewens, and producers Shelley Goldstein, Betsy Hunter, and story coach Judith Parker. Pando Days was conceived with the help of the CSO Strategic Task Force, made possible by the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, Second Home, the Mary Knowles Sisters, and many others. Make sure to join us next Tuesday at 1 p.m. For the premiere presentation by UCLA of their new initiative, Biophilia Treehouse. You can get a preview of it beginning today on our website. Projects are going up on a rolling basis on our website and are posted the Friday before their premiere event. Thank you again for joining us, and everyone have a great rest of your afternoon.